Hey guys, Josh from the Ancient History Guy here. Hello and welcome to all. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Anyways, today we are going to once again be diving into ancient Persia, specifically a little trinket that we found in Babylon. This trinket is known as the Cyrus cylinder. However, what is it and why does it exist in the first place? So to get some context here, Cyrus, more commonly known as Cyrus the Great, was the founder of the huge Persian Empire. By the time of our story, he had just overthrown the Median Empire, which his kingdom, the Persians, had been a vassal of. During the rebellion, a high-ranking Median general had defected over to his side, bringing with him his troops in the process. This had allowed Cyrus and the Persians to defeat the Medians and start the Persian Empire. After this revolution, Cyrus found his borders being attacked by the rich Lydians. The Lydians had been spurred on to attack the new empire because of a vague prophecy given to the king of the Lydians, who believed that attacking the Persians would destroy the empire. In reality, it was the Lydians' empire that had been destroyed, thus expanding Cyrus's holdings to include Iran and Anatolia. Now, bordering the south of the empire was the Neo-Babylonian Empire. This empire was relatively new in the grand scheme of things and was of a similar age to the former Median Empire. This was because both empires had actually come into existence at the same time, due to the fact that the two groups, the Babylonians and Medes, had been allies in a mass revolt against the hated Assyrians, who had ruled a vast and brutal empire. The Babylonian hit-and-run attacks, making use of marshes around their territory, together with the might of the Medes, eventually led to the rebels besieging the Assyrians in their capital, defeating them, and then carving up the empire between them. By the time of Cyrus the Great, the Babylonians controlled all of Mesopotamia and a large sway of Syria and the Levant. However, things were not all rosy within Babylon itself. Its new ruler, whose name I will not even try to pronounce, was trying to push his own personal favourite god as the one true god of all of Babylon. Now, the Babylonians are a very traditional society. They like things at home to remain the same, especially when it comes to religious practices. It's also an extremely religious society, much like all of Mesopotamia, where one god was chiefly responsible for the defence and prosperity of the city. As the gods of ancient Mesopotamia were powerful and often vague entities, being that they were literally capable of wiping out cities on the face of the earth, priests who were able to understand the weird and strange messages from the gods were extremely powerful and influential within the city, and they were not taking kindly to the fact that their king was trying to dethrone their traditional god with his own. It's not known whether or not Cyrus actually planned to invade the Babylonian Empire. At the time, he seemed to have just been busy putting down a revolt led by the Assyrians within his own empire. It seems the Babylonians responded to this military maneuver near their border, shadowing the army from a nearby colony. This, together with the fact the Babylonians were traditional allies of the defeated Median monarchy, led Cyrus to invade the empire. Luckily, the king of Babylon's popularity was at an all-time low, allowing Cyrus to just simply walk in and take the great city without a fight. In fact, he was seen by the locals as something of a liberator, as the population was simply that sick of their current king. The remnants of the Babylonian army were defeated soon after, with the royal family mysteriously disappearing from history. As I mentioned before, Babylon was a very traditional city, and one of the traditions that Cyrus had to partake in was the creation of a royal decree, usually written down on a clay cylinder. This tradition dates back centuries, with a noticeable example being the cylinder made by the invading Assyrian kings, who each had their own royal decrees. These were usually blank statements like, "I promise to keep Babylon and her traditions alive, and respect the gods, yada yada yada." This means that most of the king's cylinders are, well, sort of the same and a bit bland. Ultimately, in the broad scheme of things, these cylinders achieved very little, as they were simply a formality for the person in power to tick off his box to become king of the city. Cyrus, however, was a different ruler than the Babylonians and Assyrians. For one, his religion, Zoroastrianism, was, well, a lot less violent, meaning his belief and his morals were a little more, I guess the word is humane, than those of the Assyrians and Babylonians. Zoroastrianism, in a nutshell, is all about doing good to help their one god rid the evil from the world. That is a very condensed and broad statement on Zoroastrianism. It's honestly a fascinating and weirdly interesting moralic religion. Cyrus's personal beliefs were very strongly against the ideas of slavery, which doesn't take a genius to figure out is a fairly bad thing to do to a person. Thus, getting rid of slavery would get rid of a great evil in the world. This, together with the fact that the people largely believed Cyrus felt a kingship with the Jews, who had been deported to Babylon after their failed revolt, meant that one of the first things he did was A. release the Jews from slavery, and then B. help the Jews to return home. As a result, these declarations were written onto Cyrus's own king's cylinder, along with the usual respect Babylon and her traditions, yada yada stuff. This makes Cyrus's cylinder stand out compared to that of the other Babylonian kingship cylinders. as it's the first one that breaks from the tradition, and deliberately says we will get rid of slavery and we will help out those who are displaced. It is because of this that the Cyrus cylinder is largely seen as the first declaration of human rights, thus making it one of the most important artifacts ever found in the world, let alone in Babylon and ancient Persia. On a side note, things are not all roses with the Cyrus cylinder. It goes hard on the previous Babylonian rulers, noticeably how they had let traditions fall and how their own greed had led to them basically being seen as tyrant. It actually goes to a lot of effort to glorify Cyrus as the natural liberator and successor to the seemingly good Assyrian kings who had previously ruled Babylon. I find this fascinating, the fact that the last Babylonian king of Babylon was so bad that the priests and the people preferred to draw comparisons of the relatively gentle rule of Cyrus to that of the Assyrians. I mean, the Assyrians were highly effective, but lord were they violent and cruel. The fact that they were drawing comparisons to the Assyrians in a good light shows just how bad the royals of Babylon actually had been. So what do I think of this? Well, I think it's fascinating that one of the most important archaeological and historical artifacts is basically the result of a tradition that the Babylonians had towards their rulers. I find it quite interesting as to why this cylinder is so important, especially when we have our own declarations by other kings which are seen as less important. I also find it intriguing how Cyrus's religion actually played a part in his own declarations, and how those beliefs actually played into him creating such a declaration in the first place. This is already a long conclusion, but again, I find it amazing that the Babylonians were drawing comparisons of Cyrus to the bloody Assyrians. How bad of a ruler did you have to be in order to be seen as worse than the Assyrians? It amazes me, it really, really does. Anyways, what do you think of this? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you for watching and listening to our videos. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe if you've enjoyed. All sources are listed and linked in the description below. I've been the Ancient History Guy, and as always, I'll be seeing you later.